So the Central Bank of Nigeria has issued guidelines for open banking in Nigeria in a circular dated March 7, 2023. The Apex Bank saying that the guidelines would create greater access to customer-focused data sharing between banks and third-party firms. For analysis now, we have Muyiwa Yojimi, CEO of Consumetrics, join us via Zoom. Good to have you on the show. Good morning.
Good morning.
So first, yes, good to have you. So first of all, help us understand what open banking is.
Okay, so I mean, open banking is not new. The CBN has attempted, to launch all of this initiative since 2020, 2021. In practical terms, is sharing customer permitted data between banks and third-party firms. So it's information sharing is supposed to enable creation of customer-focused products and services. So it's the use of artificial intelligence to force banks to make the data they have on their customers shareable, between each other and with third parties.
Because definitely some people might think it's just leaving the banking hall open for them to go in and out, but it's definitely different from that. But looking at this whole idea now, do customers have anything to worry about, with this open banking?
Okay, so the open banking, the difference between the traditional banking system and the open banking system, nothing much will change. Two critical things are going to be introduced. So with the enablement of sharing data, okay, either fintech companies or companies with new innovations are able to share their products and services. So the typical traditional banking system still stays, but of course, what we now have is that there is a sharing of information of consumers' data. So the benefit to choose from a wide range of products and services is there. The opportunity to be able to get very good rates in terms of deposits, okay, cashback programs. I know there are some very big supermarket chains that would like to offer shopping deals. And so they would want to, have a measure of understanding of consumer spend to be able to do that. So it would avail, some benefits, but of course, it does come with its own issues.
And what are those issues? Because I've heard some people talk about can the banks just share their information without permission from the customers? There's also the aspect of risk there. Is my data safe being transferred from one party to another?
Yeah, so I think one thing is quite important, and the CBN has done a good job of rolling out, particularly the guidelines, to guide this framework. As far as the issues are there. Even as we speak today, we have our BVN, virtually in different space, right? Banks still share and they link, okay, technically already, our BVNs for those of us that have multiple banks. So that linking of information is there. We've always been exposed to this risk. But again, it's just going to be plunging us further for consumers to be aware of the fact that private information will be shared, much more widely. And then that speaks to data protection. I would have also thought that on the heels of this directive, I think it would come. There would be some note from the Data Protection, Data Privacy Bureau for Nigeria, for the purposes of also strengthening whatever gaps exist between the CBN directive and the existing frameworks that the Data Privacy for Nigeria dictates. I mean, it's a genuine fair. Sharing data personally, I get very excited about prospect of personalized service. But again, banks, accounts, you know, your documentations, where you've been to, what you've spent your money on, you know. Private data is inherent private, you know. I mean, like Joe Biden said sometimes, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value, right? So you spend your money on your priorities. So where that information is shared, okay, with channels that you are not able to have control of, it's a worry. Another issue is the risk management framework for these platforms, either for the financial institutions themselves, because compliance is expensive. And ordinarily, as we speak today, where we stand today, in an era where typical transfers, take a lot of effort nowadays, to get, especially with all of the things that is happening right now in terms of cash, cashless, and whatever. Layer on top of that to have open banking. There will be consumer fear around. Look, what are the frameworks? How expedient? What is the speed? What is the amount of care that is going to be given? The issue of cyber security and governance practices is also there. I mean, yes, innovation is good. It comes with a lot of its own challenges. But again, consumers will want to see the governance practices. You do a simple transaction, it's not reversed in weeks. Okay, so now if you have an open banking system, there must be some level of assurances. There must be some level beyond commerce. Okay, part of the advantage is that consumers are also able to make choices. So it's not as if this system is going to be forced on consumers generally. After all, even in the UK, you find that for about 5 years now, they've only had close to 7 million active users of open banking power technology, out of their bankable population, right? So
so at the end of the day, you have a choice to
start now.
You have a choice to either use it or not.
You have a choice to use it or not.
Okay, but
and then importantly, your consent as a consumer has to be obtained. The guidelines provide this. So it's not as if we're just going to move into that space all of a sudden. There will be appropriate consents to be able to get into that system.
Okay, so let's look at the benefits now. Do the benefits outweigh the risk?
So, like every process, ahead of beginning a journey, for some climbs, if you take Germany, if you take some of these other climbs, they've started their open banking system for quite a long time, and they've been able to perfect it. One very important thing that assists in helping consumers or measure the success of any initiative at all is their level of education. If you take the level of education in the other clients that are operating open banking, versus what we have in Nigeria, it's a challenge. And that's where consumer education is quite important. There's need for consumer education as it would entail a new implementation journey. It's a lot, it's a phase, but again, indirectly, some of these third parties, particularly fintechs, are already offering the services, can already do these things. And most importantly, this is one thing that I would say, in answering your question, I think the benefits is almost equal or better than, the negatives. What's important is the privacy issue. And if the privacy issue, for example, I'll tell you. So in terms of who the banking implementation entity is, in the CBN directive, there is supposed to be a registry, okay? Now, in the customer journey, and I'm talking about implementation now, even for the third parties or for the fintech companies and what have you, I think the consent process should be controlled by the entity. And that's talking about the CBN registry, now the open banking registry, as against each bank or each company having their own control and owning their own customer journey. This is debatable, and I'll leave that to the technology experts. But I think what is important, and because data is king right now, I wouldn't want, a consumer would not want his information either to be tradable, either to be used, as a kind of humorous lampoon or something against such consumers at some point in time.
Yeah, data is hot commodity right now. But how do you see, this open banking? How do you see it impacting Nigeria's financial system? How do you see it impacting regulation also?
Okay, so in terms of, the system generally, the impact is one very glaring impact is the fact that the multiple layer of knowing your customer is going to be demystified. Okay, so if you find out that you get into some transactions, or you want to leave the banking or the financial institution to do some of the transactions, take mortgage, for example. When you pick that item, they want to do your KYC again, and that's where you see a consumer says, oh, I'll fill all of those forms, I'll do all of these things, and what have you. I mean, this is what part of open banking system does. They already, will just tell you to fill in the minimum details, and then it eliminates that KYC process, and then they are able to also understand your appetite. So take, for example, one example that comes readily home, okay, is the fact that you want to take a mortgage, right? And you find out that you're not a regular income earner, but they can see actually that you do certain businesses, right? So that level of information, there's ability to measure the risk appetite from your history. Today, as we speak, I don't know, Ladia, how many of the bank accounts you have. Some people, just as we used to have 2-3 different lines, telephone lines, some people have 3, 4, 5, 10 bank accounts for different purposes, of course. But you can imagine the number of years that you have in terms of transactional journey on those respective bank accounts. So it would help. On the regulatory end, I think it's important, by and large, for there to be a sync within the regulatory space. I would imagine, for example, that the Open Banking Registry will have a handshake with the Data Privacy Bureau, with the Data Privacy Agency, in Nigeria. I would imagine that the constitution of that registry, okay, is expanded in a manner that would ensure that the right fits are actually there. So there are some of the things, that are not typically also altogether fine, with the resolution framework,
right?
That the CBN has also set, and I think that should, for participants to have a 2-3 layer of resolving conflicts or resolving any issues before it can be escalated by the consumer to the CBN, that's too long a time. If you don't get this resolved in 14 days, then you can bring it to CBN. Okay, that's like a cut and paste for me. If we're going to do open banking, then we should be able to live up to the fact that the consumer would also want real-time, on-time resolution to whatever issue he has. He has ordered something from Amazon, or he has ordered something from anywhere, and then there is supposed to be a gateway, or there has to be some refund, or there has to be some issues. It shouldn't take 14 days, or perhaps it was supposed to be deducted with 10 naira and it was deducted with 12 naira. It shouldn't take 14 days. We should have a very firm process around this. Technology has improved, and indeed the fintech industry has come to also, assist the financial institutions. And I think all of these would help in terms of expanding commerce and also, give consumers some level of choice, which of course is the hallmark of consumer protection.
Yeah, because it does get difficult when you're trying to open your account and you have to fill all those KYC forms from scratch, put your passport photographs all over again, and some transactions that also have to do with proof of funds. I believe this will also help. Well, it's still early days. We'll keep tracking to see the progress of open banking in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Mr. Muyiwa Ayojimi, CEO of Consumetrics. It was great having your perspective.
Thank you very much.